Alright, continuing with part 2 of the third subsection of the second section of the first chapter. He was saying that the public is sensitive only to contemporary events. They're the only ones who concern and challenge it. And propaganda only succeeds when man is challenged, feeling challenged. It doesn't have any influence when he is stabilized, relaxing, in the midst of total security. Neither past events nor great metaphysical problems challenge the average individual. Not sensitive to what is tragic in life, he is not anguished by a question that God might put to him. He does not feel challenged except by current events, political and economic. So I was just saying earlier about the info warriors calling these average individuals sheeple because they're not sensitive enough to the real questions, supposedly. Anyway, therefore propaganda must start with current events. It would not reach anybody if it tried to base itself on historical facts. Oh wow, so that's why the 1776 plan of Alex Jones and even Trump now is not being heard about much in society because it was historical and not with current events. So it seems like propaganda is like an endless loop because the solutions are in history, and even the facts are in history. But since everybody only listens to current events, they stay ignorant. That's the bottomless pit that this propaganda puts people in. We have seen wiki propaganda fail when it tried to evoke the images of Napoleon and Joan of Arc in hopes of arousing the French to turn against England. Or today the kids to turn against America. And the bitches, of course. They know what they're doing. For decades they've been doing it. Even facts so basic and deeply rooted in the French consciousness are not a good springboard for propaganda. They pass quickly into the realm of history and consequently into neutrality and indifference. This reminds me of something the Indian people say. Indian people who supposedly are countering propaganda. They often mention how people are just into fashions and trends, and that's all that revolves around their mind from watching the Idiot Box. So it's like same thing with the French. It's like if it doesn't have the right buzzwords and the right triggers, and talking about the current hot topics, then it just gets put in the trash can, and all the new flashy stuff people turn to. So even facts so basic. That reminds me of a quote I just read yesterday about how it was about some feminist who was fighting against imagined injustices and imagined oppressors, but they were just joking about how she doesn't realize that her biggest enemy is herself. And that's true for the vast majority of people, I think so. And the propaganda book proves it because of just the nature of the propaganda, nature of their mind, mental and attitude, men's attitudes. Even facts so basic and okay. There's a survey how they forgot just events that happened 10, 15 years ago. We must also bear in mind that the individual is at the mercy of events. Hardly has an event taken place before it is outdated. Yeah, that reminds me of like how there was a South Park episode about AIDS. Jared's got AIDS or something. And they were just joking about how the fact it's been like 13 or 17 years or something. Maybe it's 20 years, but there's a certain amount of time that passes in American, at least in past American dialogue, where certain tragedies that happen, people wouldn't joke about it until a certain amount of time passed. So I think that's kind of similar to the people forgetting old things and old ideas, or old events actually that were monumental. Like, people remember what happened after 9/11 and all the bad things the government did. They wouldn't be so eager to freaking put on those masks and ba'a along, you know? Anyway, hardly an event has taken place before it is outdated. Who remembers about Coney, or I don't know, that World War Z movie? I don't know. Things happened that 5 years ago and more. Even if its significance is still considerable, it is no longer of interest. And if man experiences the feeling of having escaped it, he is no longer concerned. So hardly has an event taken place before it is outdated. Even if its significance is still considerable, it is no longer of interest. If a man experiences the feeling of having escaped it, he is no longer concerned. Oh, this speaks about the female adultery again. Because when you look at the Bible was very strict. I think Islam is more relaxed when it comes to the institution of marriage. Because I think Alan Watt is right that marriage was created as a religious system to create worker bee slaves for the military. Back in the day it was the Vikings, and then the nation states and so forth. So yeah, it's necessarily restricting the sexual freedom. So but then the solution came in the 60s, which was a total, not a solution, but it was a big disease, actually. It was problem, reaction, solution again. So anyway, what was I saying? About the institution being a certain way. So anyway, the individual, the female adultery, right? It's like the Bible says if you're married to an individual, unless that person commits sexual immorality, which means contracts a STD, or or something, that's what happens. I mean, they say sex transfers spirits and stuff. So now she's like, your partner or male, after cheating, they might have contracted a demon, or something like or a new disease mentally, which was gonna create problems for you in the future. So unless the partner commits sexual immorality, you cannot divorce that partner. So you're stuck to that person for life. So divorce was not even a Christian practice. I don't know how it came in, but it is an Islamic practice. So anyway. So yeah, like I want to finish my thought. So if you want to separate, like you don't love each other anymore, you're supposed to basically go into solitude and go into prayer and stuff like that, and then you kind of go into a different mode of life, But you're not supposed to come back to a new partner. You're supposed to either, if you want to have sex, then you go back to the old partner. That's how it's supposed to be. That way, all these narcissistic traits were not being promoted, and people were not being treated like disposable units, And now it's gotten out of control with 75% divorce rate. But anyway, nobody wants to marry, and that's because they don't follow the rules that created the systems that used to work in the past. Anyway, even facts so basic. Okay, so as long as the significance is not considerable, it's not of interest, and the feeling, if the bitch feels that she has escaped it, she's no longer concerned, right? So as long as the court system is there, given a free pass, hey, keep going. New, right? New events, new life. New city, new life, new phone, new identity. That's the nomadic society. In addition, he obviously has a very limited capacity for attention and awareness. So now, yeah, exactly. That's why these bitches aren't self-aware, because they're just moving through. They should be like, if they're not satisfied, they should go back to like the nunnery and spend time at the nunnery, but they don't have nunneries anymore. So unfortunately, they don't get the peer bonding. They're supposed to go along with the pair bonding, or between go after it at a different stage or whatever. But anyway, I guess it's just a balance of those two, is what I'm trying to say. But he always, anyway, one event pushes a preceding one into oblivion. Yeah, so one event pushes the. That's what I was talking about the last 3 years too. When I was working, there was so much going on after a certain point that I kind of was just forgetting about these important things that were happening in my life, my interpersonal relations and so forth. And I kind of became unaware of my social milieu again. I think, I don't know. But when you move too fast, it's like you don't get enough time to think about what happened and learn from the mistakes and learn the lessons and analyze even what happened. And it's crazy. That's what he was saying in the previous chapter too. It's like when a man is acting, he cannot think, and when he's thinking, he cannot act. So it's like it's part of the whole contradictory mindset that we have with our dual personalities in our hypocritical dual society on the right hand path and the left hand path, created in a way that's not good for our psychic health. Anyway, where are we at? And as man's memory is short, the event that has been supplanted by another is forgotten. It no longer exists. Nobody's interested in it anymore. Yeah, that's what the bitch was saying when I was starting shit at the club over something that happened a month ago. But I didn't really process it very much. And then I processed it, and then I started getting irritated by my lack of power in the group, I guess. Anyway, man remembers no specific news. He retains only a general impression, which propaganda furnishes him, inserted in the collective current of society. So yeah, all these details people don't. When InfoWarriors talk about, oh, do you remember this detail? Do you remember? People don't really care, because their mind is only filled with this silly putty, these general impressions provided by the society, and this facilitates the work of the propagandist and permits extraordinary contradictions. So yeah, I mean, there's MGTOW guys laughing all day about the contradictory female beliefs and attitudes and actions and words, and that's precisely been engineered into the slave population to facilitate the work of the propagandist, who is obviously a god and better than you and deserves more rights over the world than you, and so forth. So most people only retain general impressions full of contradictions. What the listener retains in the long run determines his loyalties. So their loyalties are based on their ideas, obviously, which are given to them by the propagandist. The individuals who questions an item of information because he distrusts the informant ultimately forgets the suspicious nature of the source and retains only the impression of the information. Wow, so like that's another thing about being an info warrior, is like if you give information to somebody who doesn't want it, who's not on that path, and he already distrusts you because you look like a fucking weirdo and you talk like a fucking weirdo, being an info warrior who doesn't believe in the basic presumptions of society. So ultimately they'll forget that detail that you told them. They'll only remember that there was a bad guy who told him that. So that's a bad idea, you know? It's negative. So their suspicious faculty, their critical thinking has been killed off because they've been so primed for propaganda throughout their lives. The average individual basically forgets the details and only retains the impression. So belief in a reliable source of information decreases, and belief in information, but in the long run, belief in a reliable source of information decreases, and belief in information from the suspicious source increases. Because like the Indian motto of the Indian state is Satyamev Jayate, or the truth is victorious. Truth is eventually come to light. So anyway, I think that's what he's saying there. And then there's an example of something, an association organized a lecture on the atomic bomb. The lecture would have been of great interest, and not even for propaganda. And a wide distribution of leaflets has announced it to the general public. But not a single student came. Why? Because this happened at exactly the same time as Sputnik's success. And the public was concerned only with this single piece of news. Oh, wow. So sometimes if there's something big going on in society, there can be some mega great event, and people will forget about those other little details. So its sole interest was in Sputnik, and the permanent problem was forgotten. So even though the atomic bomb was a much bigger issue, people were just, daydreaming about the stars. Or sleepwalking, watching the stars. Or getting brainwashed by the stars, just like in that planetarium, episode of South Park, If you watched it. Actually, the public is prodigiously sensitive to current news. Its attention is focused immediately on any spectacular event that fits in with its myths. So as long as it fits in with the myths and is spectacular, like Obama, the public is going to be focused immediately. Oh man, I guess that's why the pickup. That's what the pickup artists kind of capitalize on the myths. And every boy has a spectacular event when he hits puberty and gets gaslighted and fucking neglected and devalued by the narcissistic society around in school and so forth. I fucking went to school way too long, but anyway. At the same time, the public will fix its interest and its passion on one point, to the exclusion of all the rest. Besides, people have already become accustomed to and have accommodated themselves to the rest, or yesterday's news, or the day before yesterday. So we're dealing here not just with forgetfulness, but also with plain loss of interest. So forgetfulness and also loss of interest. And that goes along with the attention span. Same kind of idea. I guess no, this is more to do with education and the scholarly nature, I guess, of somebody. Capacity for intellectual thought. Anyway, a good example is Khrushchev's ultimatum at the beginning of 1959, the Berlin Problem. So there was an ultimatum, and then there was a time limit, and there was no war. But the public opinion grew accustomed to it and lost interest after no war broke out. So when the ultimatum passed, people were surprised when they were reminded of it. And Khrushchev said nothing on May 27th. Not having obtained anything, he simply counted on the fact that everyone had forgotten his ultimatum, which shows what a subtle propagandist he is. So Khrushchev said nothing. He had not obtained anything. He counted on the fact that everyone had forgotten his ultimatum, which shows what a subtle propagandist he is. It is impossible to base a propaganda campaign on an event that no longer worries the public. It is forgotten, and the public has grown accustomed to it. Wow. Damn, so that's crazy. So if it's not a hot topic, I guess you can't even warn the public about it. I mean, not immediately. Of course, they talk about the pre-propaganda and all that. It is forgotten in the public. The communist states met and signed an agreement, and the text was remarkable, but nobody discussed the important matter of the propaganda failing. The progressives were not troubled by it. The partisans of peace did not say one word, although the text was excellent. Oh, nobody talked about the text, I guess. Huh. About the Berlin Wall, I guess? I don't know. Oh, yeah. Having to do with the Berlin Wall. Okay. But everything it contained was old hat to the public, and the public could not get interested all over again in an outdated theme when it was not uneasy over a specific threat of war. Okay, so when the theme is outdated, you cannot move the public. It would appear that propaganda for peace. Yeah, that's what Alan Watt was saying too. I mean, about the whole biblical stuff and using the Bible to like promote a point. It's like it's just so old hat, and it just reeks of like 1950s and before America that it cannot move people, unfortunately, even though it has condensed red pill bombs, like they say. So that's why I say like the vast majority of people are just like are said to be dead, because it's like to a person who's like inquisitive and into these areas, which people are even ignorant about, some people, or I used to be at least. Yeah, so you will seem like it's just a zombie, you know? Brains, and they're just repeating the same old mumbo jumbo. Shoot. Anyway, I gotta go. I think I have too many pages and too many works to do.